loophole-ridden immigration laws. They wanted that caravan, and there are those that say that caravan didn't just happen. It didn't just happen. They like it. They also figure everybody coming in is going to vote Democrat. You know. Hey, they're not so stupid when you think about it, right? But they are crazy. We have to have more votes so we can put in strong, conservative, Republican, but common sense. It's not even Republican, conservative. It's common sense policies. It's common sense.
So we are covering all angles. Kevin Corke live from the White House. RNC spokeswoman Kayleigh McEnany on the midterms, 18 days away. But we begin. Rich Edson's live at the State Department. And Rich, the Secretary of State, says he's got some more work to do on this in Mexico. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Bill. And he does. The Secretary of State's in Mexico City. He says that the Mexican government is working in good faith to address this issue. Thousands of migrants coming north from Central America towards the United States. He says the U.S. and Mexico are doing a little more work on this. They still have work to do to address this issue. He also says that he's coordinating with officials from the existing and incoming governments there. Mexico's new government takes over December 1st. Mexico has announced it will return migrants coming through Mexico to their home countries. Mexico also says it's coordinating with the United Nations Refugee Agency to help deal with migrants heading north from Central America and fleeing poverty and violence there. The State Department says it welcomes the Mexico-United Nations cooperation. The Secretary arrived in Mexico coming from Panama yesterday, where he had meetings with officials there, Bill.
In the meantime, you know, when you think about the disappearance of Khashoggi, Mike Pompeo had pointed comments last night about what he did or did not learn overseas. Rich, what's that about?
Yeah, he did, and he was just in that region. He left for that trip yesterday to Panama and Mexico about 12 hours after returning from Saudi Arabia and from Turkey. Much of the information that's released about Khashoggi's disappearance is coming from Turkish reports and officials. One claims Secretary Pompeo heard an alleged recording of Khashoggi's murder inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Speaking to reporters, Secretary Pompeo says, quote, "I've heard no tape. I've seen no transcript. This is a very serious matter that we're working diligently on, and so to put out headlines like that are factually false does no one any good." The secretary says he's giving the Saudi government a few more days to investigate Khashoggi's disappearance, and the results of that will determine how or if the U.S. will respond. He's also stressed the significant economic and security ties between the United States and Saudi Arabia. All this as Democrats and Republicans, many in the Senate, are calling already for sanctions on those found responsible or for the U.S. to cancel weapons sales to Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Rich. We'll be back with you throughout the morning. Okay, Rich Edson from the State Department there. Thanks. Julie?
All right. Meanwhile, President Trump, who had previously warned against rushing to judgment in the case of Jamal Khashoggi, now saying it does appear the Washington Post columnist is dead, and he's just waiting for investigations to wrap up to take action.
Jamal Khashoggi is dead. It certainly looks that way to me. It's very sad. It certainly looks that way. What are you considering for possible consequences based on those? Well, it'll have to be very severe. I mean, it's bad stuff. But we'll see what happens.
Kevin Corke live at the White House now. All right, so Kevin, how soon does the White House expect to get to the Saudis' report on Khashoggi's death?
Well, believe it or not, it could happen as soon as today, although White House officials, at least officially, Julie, are saying, listen, we're going to let this thing play out. We're going to respect them and give them the chance to work through the investigation. But my sources tell me they expect a report fairly soon and in fairly short order. Now, you and I have talked about this and about Rich's report. Is there an audio tape out there? That remains unclear. But we do know this is clear. Heather Nauert told us Secretary Pompeo has neither heard a tape nor has he seen a transcript related to Jamal Khashoggi's disappearance. And I mentioned that transcript because there were some people saying, well, okay, if there wasn't a tape, did he read something like that? Heather Nauert tells us absolutely not. Meanwhile, asked whether this will upset the long-standing ties between the U.S. and the Saudi kingdom, Secretary of State Pompeo said no.
I think it's important for us all to remember, too, we have since 1932, a long strategic relationship with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They continue to be an important counterterrorism partner. They have custody of the two holy sites. They are an important strategic alliance of the United States, and we need to be mindful of that as well.
need to be mindful of the long-standing relationship. I asked a White House official as early as this morning if they felt like this would lead to very severe consequences, and she put it bluntly, yes.
Where are we, Kevin, on the White House's response to the migrant caravan, which is heading toward our southern border?
Yeah, this is a very big story, Julie. Obviously, the White House continues to apply pressure on their neighbors to the south, Mexico's government, to do something to keep that caravan from making it from the southern end of Mexico all the way to our border. In fact, the president said as much last night at that Make America Great rally in Montana.
I just want to thank the Mexican government because they're stopping it, hopefully, before it ever gets to Mexico. As you know, I'm willing to send the military to defend our southern border if necessary.
Well, that certainly got a lot of attention. So did the president's comments about Montana Congressman Greg Gianforte. You may remember he actually got involved in a bit of a dust-up with a reporter. Well, the president had this to say about the congressman.
Any guy that can do a body slam, he's my kind. And he was way up, and I said, oh, this was like the day of the election or just before. And I said, oh, this is terrible. He's going to lose the election. Then I said, well, wait a minute. I know Montana pretty well. I think it might help him, and it did.
Now, there'll be some who will point to the audience, Julie, and say, listen, they were laughing and making light of this, but obviously this is a very serious issue for journalists. In fact, the Committee to Protect Journalists, the CPJ, is calling on the president to apologize for his comments last night. Julie?
All right. Kevin Cork, thank you.
You want to see what's on the line for this campaign swing? It's pretty obvious on the board over here when you talk about the battle for the U.S. Senate. Balance of power right now going into a midterm that's 18 days away. It's 51 Republicans, Democrats at 49. President Trump, 4-state swing through Monday, putting illegal immigration front and center. Kayleigh McEnany, spokesperson RNC, with me now. Kayleigh, good morning to you. Just explain.
Good morning.
What is the strategy on immigration here?
Well, the strategy of immigration is to put it in the forefront, Bill. We saw a definitive change in polling when Democrats started calling for the abolition of ICE. In that moment, when mainstream Democrats started calling for the abolition of this law enforcement entity, we saw it rise to prominence in the polls, motivating Republican voters. 79% of Trump voters said immigration was a very important issue to their vote in 2016. And the lawlessness we see approaching our southern border is something that is sending GOP voters straight to the polls.
Okay, I'm going to show you something on the map right now that we're watching, okay? Because it's no accident you watch the travel and the trip of the president and the vice president, too, over the coming 3 weeks. It was Montana late yesterday. Good matchup between Rosendale and Democrat John Tester. You see what the president did two years ago in Montana. He beat Hillary Clinton by 20 points. Pop on out here and go down to Arizona. That's where the campaign rally will happen a bit later today. Martha McSally up against the Democrat Sinema. You see what he did there 2 years ago, won the state by about 4 points. Up here in Nevada, different story. Dean Heller's running for a re-election there. He's the only Republican on the ballot in a state that Donald Trump did not win. Hillary Clinton winning that state by about 2.5 points 2 years ago. On Monday, it is Texas, so you have quite clearly on the map behind us, Kayleigh, you have at least Arizona and Texas, 2 big border states on this issue. It's pretty obvious what the White House is up to on this.
No doubt about it. And in every single one of those races you pointed to, public polling shows the Republican up. After the Kavanaugh hearings, amid calls for violence from Democrats and amid this caravan approaching the southern border, we have seen polling shift in our direction. And you're exactly right to point out Texas and Arizona. This is uniquely motivating for those 2 states. And you better believe that this is going to come up in Texas with Ted Cruz and in Arizona with Martha McSally.
So I see Lindsey Graham's hitting the trail. By the way, the results from 2016 behind us. You can see 2 of the 4 border states were won by President Trump. California, clearly not. New Mexico, not either. Lindsey Graham's going on the trail. Part of his trip, Kayleigh, is clearly to remind voters about the Kavanaugh confirmation. Do Republicans believe they're losing the bump in the Kavanaugh confirmation of 2 weeks ago?
No, we don't believe that, because post-Kavanaugh bump, we saw a lot of inane comments from Democrats. Hillary's comments about the Me Too movement and essentially her husband abusing power, not abusing power. Elizabeth Warren and the DNA test. Eric Holder made some wrong-headed comments. These left-wing gaffes have continued the tailwind behind our base. But you're right to say we've got to remind voters about Kavanaugh, because that is where we saw a definitive turn in the polling. Lindsey Graham is a big part of reminding voters.
Joe Biden's going to be out there on Monday. So is Barack Obama. What do you think about that?
Welcome them onto the campaign trail, because this election, 2016, was a direct rejection of the Obama presidency and an embrace of the outsider, President Donald Trump. So bringing the establishment elite back on the campaign trail helps us out quite a bit.
Well, George Bush is going to Indiana, too, to campaign for Mike Braun. It's a good race there as well. Kayleigh, thank you for your time. We'll talk again next week, okay? And to the DNC.
Thanks so much, Bill.
We'd love to have you come on and give a counter view here as to what we're talking about today. So anytime, the invitation is out there. Bottom of the hour, Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn out of Tennessee is here. 11 o'clock hour, we're joined by Dean Heller in Nevada, the incumbent in a very close race out there in the American West. So all that's coming up a bit later today. Back to Julie across the room now.
All right, Bill. President Trump talking tough on yet another big issue with our immigration laws. Catch and release. Listen to this.
We will fully secure the border. We will pass Kate's law, stop sanctuary cities, stop catch and release. And we will keep the criminal drug dealers and terrorists the hell out of our country.
Why we are now learning that many of the illegal immigrants coming into our borders are now released within days because they just don't have enough space to keep them all in custody. We're going to dig into that next.
Also, you got breaking news from the U.S. Navy. At least 12 U.S. sailors injured when a helicopter crashes on an aircraft carrier out at sea. What we are learning at the moment about this incident.
And a top Republican lawmaker now saying Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein needs to resign immediately. We're going to ask former U.S. Attorney Congressman John Ratcliffe what he thinks in a moment.
I think it's time that Rod Rosenstein steps down and should do so immediately. And in doing that, I think it would serve the country well, it would serve this president well.
You might take something.
Helicopter crashing on the USS Ronald Reagan today. The emergency landing happening right off the Philippine coast. 2 pilots and 2 crew members were on the chopper. Injuries range from minor cuts to broken bones. Nothing life-threatening, thank goodness. The cause is under investigation.
Rod Rosenstein has not displayed the candor of which would support one's theory of actually believing that he has been open and honest in all regards. And so with that, I think it's time that Rod Rosenstein steps down.
House Freedom Caucus Chair Mark Meadows taking dead aim at Rod Rosenstein, saying Committee Member Congressman John Ratcliffe is with me now, the Republican. Committee Member Congressman John Ratcliffe is with me now, the Republican out of Texas. Good morning and welcome back here to America's Newsroom. You heard what Meadows said. Do you agree with your colleague?
Well, Bill, whatever explanation Rod Rosenstein gave President Trump on Air Force One last week gave President Trump on Air Force One last week satisfied the president, at least for now, with members of Congress. I think Rod Rosenstein should have that same opportunity with members of Congress, and he'll get that next week. I won't be in the room for that as a former federal prosecutor. I'd like to question Rod Rosenstein about this. But another former federal prosecutor, Trey Gowdy, any question that will be in the room, so I have every confidence that any question that I would have better than I could. Trey Gowdy will ask that question as well or better than I could have, and we'll
What determines?
Well, I think there was a negotiation between the chairman of the respective committees and the chairman of the respective committees and the Department of Justice. I have satisfied the president with my explanation. He's the head of the executive branch. My explanation. He's the head of the executive branch. That's fine, but we have an oversight role. Members of Congress have an explanation. That's fine, but we have an oversight role, and we deserve to have an explanation too. I wish I was in the room. So those were negotiated details. Again, I wish I was in the room, but I have every confidence that Trey Gowdy and Chairman Goodlatte will get the answers to the very legitimate questions about this extraordinary circumstance, and most importantly, why this extraordinary circumstance under oath took place, and that will be transcribed under oath, and members of the public, so there will be transcripts. Will ultimately get to see that transcript, so there will be transcripts.
There are a lot of names to keep track of. One of them, James Baker, an FBI former attorney for the FBI yesterday. You were in the room for his testimony yesterday. Did he put you at ease?
He didn't put me at ease. I can't tell you specifically what he said. He didn't put me at ease. I can't tell you specifically what he said, but what I can tell you is I walked out of that room concerned that the FBI and the Department of Justice had not met its obligations in disclosing material facts, had not met its obligations in disclosing material facts to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. FBI more convinced and more concerned that classified information to the media had violated its classified information to the media had violated its own rules, like Christopher Steele, and I guess most importantly, Bill, I'm more Christopher Steele, and I guess most importantly, a bunch of Trump-hating, more convinced and more lawyers that a bunch of Trump-hating were telling agents and lawyers he was not under investigation at a time where they were discussing. He was not under investigation at a time where they were discussing investigating President Trump.
More convinced seems to be a bit of a headline. More convinced than ever. So it was James Baker yesterday. It's Nellie Orr today. So it was James Baker yesterday. It's Nellie Orr today. It's Rod Rosenstein next week. And you've got 18 days away from the midterm. And I'm looking at a calendar. And you've got 18 days away from the midterm. Under a time crunch to get this done. Do you feel the pressure in the event that Republicans lose control of the House, sir? In the event that Republicans lose control of the House,
I think we're absolutely under the gun. I do, Bill. Because I think we're absolutely really under the gun with every we're asking really tough questions. We find every facts that haven't been disclosed to the American people. We find important facts that haven't been disclosed to the American people. Of the House in November, Democrats gain control of the House in November, come January when they're sworn in and take control. And the investigations, all of these investigations will stop, and the Trump administration into the Trump campaign and the Trump administration will start.
That would be quite a sea change.
I'm optimistic that won't happen, Bill. I'm optimistic that won't happen, Bill.
We'll see about that, and I appreciate pitching for the party there. But when you think about pitching for the party there, if you lose the House, but when you think about this, everything you've looked in for 2 years. Everything you've looked in for 2 years. That must be a great concern to you and your colleagues. That must be a great concern to you and your colleagues.
But it should be a greater concern to the American people. Well, it is, but it should be a greater concern to the American people who want transparency on this issue, who want the rule of law enforced and people treated equally under the law. And I think they very clearly have seen that the FBI and the Department of Justice prejudged Hillary Clinton's innocence and prejudged Donald Trump's guilt. And if they want accountability at the end of the day, they'll vote Republican.
Nellie Orr today. We'll see what comes of that, sir. Behind closed doors yet again. John Ratcliffe, thank you for your time, sir.
You bet, Bill.
Okay, thank you. Julie.
Outgoing U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, cracking some jokes at a high-profile fundraising event. Watch.
So I really am super excited to be at the Al Smith dinner. As a member of the Trump cabinet, it is a thrill to be out to dinner without being harassed.
And it didn't stop there. Much more on her comments and who she poked fun at on the Democratic side when we dig in with our A-Team coming up.
This program is brought to you by Insure, for the strength and energy to always be.
I saw it as an FBI agent. Mortgage fraud is everywhere. Now there's a totally new kind of crime.
It's called catch and release. You ever hear this one? You catch them, you find out about them. Even if you find out bad things, you catch them and you release them. And then you say, come back for a court case. There's only a problem. There's not enough judges in the world to take care of it.
Back to one of our top stories this morning. President Trump ripping the Democrats over the caravan of illegal immigrants, thousands of them heading toward our southern border. This comes at a time many migrants are being caught, then released because the government shelters are out of space. William Lajeunesse is in Los Angeles. William, catch and release, I usually refer to, fishing that way. But apparently they're being let go because there's no room for them.
Right. Well, Julie, there's two things happening right now. One is that very important deal with Mexico that could drastically reduce future illegal immigration. But two, the current situation. Immigrants in the pipeline overwhelming the Border Patrol because of court decisions and a lack of shelter space. This is where most illegal immigrant families end up, a bus station. This family from Guatemala caught hit crossing illegally 3 days earlier in Arizona, now on their way to Texas to live with family.
We have to basically let them go outside our front door, or we transport them to places where they can get shelter and they can get help.
So take a look at this video. Immigrants jumping off a 14-foot fence, breaking bones, cutting themselves on barbed wire. This year, the Yuma Border Patrol sent 1,500 immigrants to the hospital. Taxpayers' medical bill, $3 million.
just recently we had a lady jump off the fence holding her 5-month-old daughter, and both of them hit the ground. The mother had a severely broken leg, required 2 weeks in the hospital, and then we get the 5-month-old baby.
So last night you heard in Montana President Trump blaming Democrats for catch and release because they're blocking changes in the asylum law that caused that to occur. Julie?
So what is the solution then?
Well, you got poverty and crime pushing people out of Central America, and jobs and freedom in the U.S., that's the pull. And that explains this caravan that we know about. The last night came word, however, this deal with Mexico to deter them. Mexico is saying it will use the United Nations to screen U.S.-bound refugees on their southern border, not on U.S. soil. And two, if a refugee fails to apply for asylum in Mexico first, the U.S. does not have to allow them in.
The Mexican government has made it crystal clear that if somebody wants to enter Mexico, it must do so in compliance with our own immigration law.
So details still being worked out, but the president says he'll bring the National Guard to the border if that caravan makes it there. Back to you.
All right, William Lajeunesse, thank you. Bill?
27 past on a wild ride on Wall Street. Dow slid more than 300 points at one point. Dow opening bell a few moments away. So we'll look at how the market is faring today in the midst of what appears to be a really good economy.
Yeah, it certainly does. Off to a good start. Plus, as we wait to get some concrete answers on the Saudi missing columnist, one big question remains. How will the U.S. move forward with Saudi Arabia if we end up learning they were involved? Israeli ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, joins us on that next.
We have a long, since 1932, a long strategic relationship with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They continue to be an important counterterrorism partner. They have custody of the two holy sites. They are an important strategic alliance.
Nothing says fall like a homecoming.
Ethiopia had a wild ride yesterday. A lot of concern over the Saudi-U.S. relationship after Steve Mnuchin says he will not attend their economic summit next week. So Mnuchin will stay home, and a lot of American CEOs are going to take a pass on it this year as well. So that's kind of played with their minds a little bit yesterday. Right. Finished downside, so we'll see where we go here on a Friday.
Yeah, putting a little pressure on there.
Fundamentals still seem to be really strong. And, you know, Charles Payne will tell you every time he comes out here, there's a lot of good news out there. Especially coming up on this election now in 18 days. So.
Yeah, well, people are happy with their economy, so
take that.
They got something to celebrate.
25-5 and roll up.
Jamal Khashoggi is dead. It certainly looks that way to me. It's very sad. It certainly looks that way. What are you considering for possible consequences based on those? Well, it'll have to be very severe. I mean, it's bad, bad stuff. But we'll see what happens.
That's the president before he got off to Montana yesterday, now saying that he believes missing columnist Jamal Khashoggi is likely dead, saying the consequences will be severe if the Saudis are proven to be involved. This is Turkish investigators conduct a second sweep of the Saudi kingdom's consulate in Istanbul, and Benjamin Hall reports again live from that city today in Turkey. Benjamin.
Hi, Bill. Turkish investigators also saying they are very close to releasing the results of their investigation. They are just waiting on a few more lab tests. But meanwhile here, the focus has actually shifted to trying to find Khashoggi's body, with police searching a forest just outside Istanbul. Now, Turkish officials claim that his body may have been disposed of in the nearby Belgrade forest, or perhaps on farmland near the city of Yalova, where one of the vehicles allegedly traveled to after leaving the consulate. At this moment, though, crucial evidence still hinges on those infamous audio tapes Turkish authorities claim to have, but despite repeated calls to release them, they haven't yet done so. Yesterday, ABC News claimed that Secretary of State Pompeo had been given access to the gruesome recording and listened to it, something he has vehemently denied, saying, quote, "I've heard no tape, I've seen no transcript." Pompeo went on to say, quote, "This is wrong to do to the fiancé of Khashoggi. This is a very serious matter that we're working diligently on, and so to put out headlines that are factually false does no one any good." And the Turkish foreign minister has also reiterated his belief that no one in the intelligence community in the U.S. has seen or heard these tapes, nor has Secretary Pompeo. Yeah. Bill?
I mentioned a moment ago Steve Mnuchin will not go to that investor conference in Saudi Arabia. What more do we know about that, Benjamin?
Yeah. Bill, many people saying this is the first major rebuke of the Saudi royal family by the Trump administration. This was a major event for the Saudis, hoping to bring in investment from around the world. Yesterday, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin saying on Twitter that he would no longer be attending the major investment summit, though he does still plan to travel to Saudi Arabia for previously scheduled official but private meetings unrelated to the summit. And we're also hearing now from Russian President Vladimir Putin, who has said he has not yet seen enough evidence to jeopardize his relationship with the Saudis.
Benjamin Hall, all that story as it changes from Istanbul. Thank you, sir.
The president warning his administration could consider severe punishment for Saudi Arabia, despite our long-standing ties to the kingdom. So what does Israel, our #1 ally in the Middle East, think of all of this? Ambassador Danny Danon is here on set, the Israeli ambassador to the UN. Always great to see you.
Good morning.
How does Israel feel? What do you make of this situation?
We are waiting to hear the answers from the Saudis. President Trump was very clear about it, that he demands answers. And I think in the next 48 hours, we will receive answers. People are looking at what happened there, and we see those videos. It's disturbing. It looks like a movie. Yeah, we need answers from the Saudis, and President Trump was very clear about that.
Can we trust the answers from the Saudis, though?
They have to give an explanation. You see the pictures. The journalist walked into the consulate. What happened to him? They will have to give a good explanation to their allies, to the U.S., and to the entire world.
I mean, the entire world is watching, and so far the evidence doesn't seem to point in a positive direction for Saudi Arabia. Chris Wallace yesterday compared to the Saudis investigating this to O.J. Simpson investigating Nicole Brown Simpson's murder. How do we trust the Saudis when we're hearing there are reports that allegedly the suspects once worked in the King Salman's security detail? So how is it then that Saudi Arabia has any say or play on this investigation? Mike Pompeo even is saying, let's wait for Saudi Arabia to finish and conclude its investigation. Can we trust their findings?
It's not going to disappear. You know, at the beginning, some people said, well, nothing happened. They ignored it completely. They denied it completely. Today, they understand they will have to come up with good answers. They cannot ignore that. People are looking to get the answers. That's why I think we will get answers from them. We will have to see the answers and decide whether we believe them or not.
It's been weeks, and the consulate was wiped clean. I mean, there were chemicals that were used in this murder, and the place has been repainted. How are they supposed to collect evidence? How do we trust that weeks later we are actually going to get concrete evidence? And then what are the results? If we do, in fact, find out Saudi Arabia is culpable, the president says that they will be severe. What is severe enough?
So the U.S. and the Saudis are very close. So I think President Trump was very clear about it, but he will not ignore it. He will take actions against the Saudis. And not only the U.S. The Europeans are working very closely with the Saudis. They have a huge economy. I think many countries in Europe will have also to decide what they're doing with the Saudis once they're getting those answers, and they will have to push them to give the answers.
What happens with the energy sanctions targeting Iran set to take effect in a couple of weeks?
First of all, the sanctions are working. We see the numbers. Germany just published that the export to Iran is decreasing, and in a few days there will be more sanctions, and it will hurt the Iranian economy. And by the way, some European companies trying to bypass the sanctions. They're offering incentives to companies to continue to work with Iran. It's not going to work. We have to put sanctions on Iran. We will see more demonstrations, and I think it's very effective that the leadership of the U.S. is working today.
I want to turn now to a Fox exclusive. Jennifer Griffin reporting from the Pentagon and saying that apparently Iran, and they've got the flight number, the flight path. A flight out of Tehran is actually sending advanced weapons to Lebanon via Syria. And sources are saying that the plane on Tehran, its systems, the package actually contains GPS monitoring that is allowing them to have weapons that would target Israel. What's your take on that?
It's true. It's happening. Every day, every week, the Iranians supplying terrorists in the Middle East with weapons, especially in Lebanon, in Syria. They're using commercial flights. Can you believe it? By the way, I don't recommend you to fly Ma'an Air, the Iranian airline, because they put weapons and chemicals on commercial flights to Damascus. That was the exclusive of Fox News. And then they take it by car from Damascus to Beirut to the hands of Hezbollah.
All right. Ambassador Danon, thank you so much. That's all the time we have.
Thank you very much.
We always love having you on. Thank you so much. Bill.
Thank you, Julie. Last night, Boston Red Sox going back to the World Series. This after clinching the series win over the Houston Astros, Game 5 ALCS. 4-1 the final. They knock out the defending champs. Well, Red Sox have a good team, as you know. The Dodgers are playing well. The Brewers had an awesome season.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, at this point, baseball can't lose. But if you get, no offense against Milwaukee, love the Brewers, a Midwest guy. If you get an LA-Boston series.
You'd make a great politician, by the way.
You.
I just want to say.
It would be great for baseball. Both coasts. Big
I'm going
series,
for the Red Sox. I'm just going to go out there. Yeah, I'm a little more opinionated than you.
I got it.
Red Sox. All right. I lived in Boston, so you know. Okay. Moving on, another big Senate race we are watching ahead of these crucial midterms. Battleground Tennessee, where Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn is fighting to keep that Senate in the red. Plus, there's this.
We hold the House and we increase the Senate. And because I think that's justice. I think that's just. I think the Democrat Party deserves to lose.
Did you watch this interview? Rush Limbaugh with a bold prediction. We'll take it to America's A-Team in a moment here. Coming up. I'd like Senator Bob Corker's seat in Tennessee appears to be a rather close one. Real Clear polling average has the Republican Marsha Blackburn, the Congresswoman, leading the Democrat Phil Bredesen by about 6 points. Marsha Blackburn is with me now. How you doing? Good morning to you. I saw a poll that shows your opponent up a point. What's going on in Tennessee on this race?
Oh, I tell you, there are going to be all sorts of polls. The only one that counts is November 6th on Election Day, and we intend to win this race, and we're going to win this race.
Okay, so the president right now is on a 4-state swing. And his strategy is pretty obvious. He's putting immigration on the forefront of a lot of minds of American voters, especially when it comes to Arizona today and Texas on Monday. Is that a big deal in Tennessee?
It is such a big deal. And, Bill, the reason is because of loose immigration policies, every state's a border state and every town's a border town. And in my race in the U.S. Senate, when Phil Bredesen was governor, he issued valid state-issued, taxpayer-funded driving certificates to 51,000 illegal aliens. He made our state a magnet for illegal aliens. And people in Tennessee remember that. They did not like the policy. The General Assembly had to go in and change that policy, shut it down. And people want to make certain that we secure our borders and we end sanctuary city policies.
Okay, so he's a pretty popular governor. And this is a really good race. And I mentioned the issue about immigration. This is what our Fox polling found out just a few days ago.
Is number
two. They put health care as the number one issue facing Americans. The economy is number 2. And President Trump is number 2 because things are going pretty well for a lot of folks right now. How does the president the economy slides to number 2 because things are going pretty well for a lot of folks right now.
Tennessee
How does the president play in
Donald
Tennessee
Trump.
In this vote?
When you look at the fact that Tennessee appreciates Donald Trump. When you look at the fact that we have like that, Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court. They wanted him confirmed. Tennesseans really like that. They supported Brett Kavanaugh. They wanted him confirmed. I tell you what they do like too is Lindsey Graham's comments, how he came to the defense. I tell you what they do like too is Lindsey Graham's comments, how he came to the defense with Brett Kavanaugh, and called out the Democrats for playing politics with keeping tax cuts, jobs in the economy, keeping that going, the immigration issue, tax cuts, jobs to get the economy, keeping that going. The immigration issue is Tennesseans want to get the Affordable Care Act off the books. Insurance in Tennessee. The reason is because that has driven up the cost of health insurance in Tennessee by 176%.
Keep focused on what you just said here. Pre-existing conditions, and we can have that debate another day. But I just want to keep focused on what you just said here. The primary reason for his travel Lindsey Graham is going on the road. I think he's going to 12 different states. Does that then the primary reason for his travel is to remind people about the churns about every hour of every day? Does that then suggest that the Kavanaugh bump in a news cycle that churns about every hour of every day?
No, it is not dissipating. I started my morning here in Chattanooga with a group of veterans. No, it is not dissipating. I started my morning here in Chattanooga with a group of veterans over at the VFW. And one of the first things they talked justices was having good federal judges so important and having good Supreme Court justices. And the reason it is so important to their grandchildren and their future, not necessarily about today. It is about their children and their grandchildren and their future. And preserving these freedoms that they put on the uniform and they've fought for. About every single conversation. Our Tennesseans bring this up in just about every single conversation. Reminding people about this really delighted that Lindsey Graham is going to be reminding people about this battle. Watch what was carried out against Justice Kavanaugh, and especially women here in Tennessee. Watch what was carried out against Justice Kavanaugh, and they said, "What if that were my husband or my brother or my son? What if they were denied an opportunity until we're proven guilty?" Why is he considered guilty? We're supposed to be innocent until we're proven guilty in Tennessee, and that really kind of struck that chord of fairness. Treated fairly in Tennessee, and they want to know that people are going to be treated fairly and have due process.
You wonder if that cuts differently between men and women, and we'll see what happens in 18 days. Last point on this. Now, President Trump did well 2 years ago in Tennessee.
I got to tell you,
should this race right now be at 6 points?
This is his fourth statewide race. I got to tell you, and he has that statewide name ID. This is his fourth. We knew that this was going to be a tight race. He has all the media and the money, and we knew that this was going to be a tight race. He has all the media and the money working with him. Chuck Schumer, Mike Bloomberg, the Democrat organization. You're right. They're pumping it into Tennessee. You're right. They're pumping it in here really as fast as they can.
We're watching it very closely. Thank you for your time. We've invited Phil Bredesen to come and join us, and we hope he accepts our invitation sometime soon. To come and join us, Marsha Blackburn, thank you. Invitation sometime soon. Marsha Blackburn, thank you. Live there in Tennessee.
Thank you.
In about an hour, we're going to bring on Dean Heller. He is in a really tough race in the state of Nevada.
Thank you.
In about an hour, we're going to bring on Dean Heller. He is in a really tough race in the state of Nevada. And find out up against Jackie Rosen, the Democratic representative there. So we'll talk to him and find out what's moving the meter in Nevada.
Nellie Orr arriving for her big interview. Brand new video coming into our newsroom right now. Lawmakers want answers on her arriving for her big interview with the House Judiciary Committee and the group behind lawmakers want answers on her connections to both the Justice Department and the group behind the anti-Trump dossier.
Also breaking news today in the case of Jimmy Claus. She's now on a nationwide search the FBI's missing persons list. We've got the latest on a nationwide search coming up in a moment.
We believe Jamie was in the home at the time of the homicide. Based on our investigations thus far, we believe Jamie was in the home at the time of the homicides, and we believe she is still in danger.
Take control of Harper. So you don't have to stash antacids here. Take Prilosec OTC and take control of Harper. So you don't have to stash antacids here. Kick your antacid habit with Prilosec OTC. 1 pill a day, 24 hours, zero Kick your antacid habit with Prilosec OTC. 1 pill a day, 24 hours, zero heartburn.
Yeah, I might.
I want to get a bar put in over there.
Give me a bunch of quotes, check the reviews, and verify the credentials and qualifications. Yeah, I might.
Nice. Now putting 13-year-old Jamie Claus at the top of its missing for 5 days, vanishing from the house where her parents were both found dead. Claus now missing for 5 days, vanishing from the house where her parents were both found dead. Matt Finn is
Julie,
live
this
in
is the
Barron,
Claus house where police say
Matt?
James and Denise Claus were shot to death. Their 13-year-old daughter house where police say James and Denise Claus were shot to death. Their 13-year-old daughter likely there to witness her parents' murder. Was either kicked in or shot in. Now that front door is apparently missing, replaced by pieces or shot in. And now that front door is apparently missing, replaced by pieces of plywood. And this morning, we'd like to show you some new pictures obtained by Fox News of this couple that was murdered, according to police. So far, yesterday, no piece of information to suggest anyone would want to search a 14-mile stretch. Yesterday, law enforcement organized 100 volunteers to search a 14-mile stretch of the ditch line on the highway where this house sits. The sheriff has since posted, unfortunately, that search did not yield anything of evidentiary. The sheriff has since posted, unfortunately, that search did not yield anything of evidentiary value. Law enforcement tells us that neighbors here are pleading to assist in this search. We got to talk to some of those volunteers.
Jamie and I said,
dad grabbed me and said,
let's go.
It's just that
they're
the
doing a
murders are
search for
bothering everybody.
Jamie, and I said,
for Jamie,
absolutely, let's go.
We're hoping that it's just that she's the murders are bothering everybody. As for Jamie, we're hoping that
the Barron County Sheriff says more than 400
tips have come in, but so far no suspects.
The Barron County Sheriff says more than 400 tips have come in, but so far no suspects in this mystery. The sheriff is urging people to search their cabins or neighbors in this area. We say for anything suspicious. We talk to business owners and neighbors in this area. We say investigators have showed up to their door asking for any surveillance. But right now, this entire region on edge because whoever made their way into this house and killed two people and perhaps abducted a 13-year-old girl still at large right now. Julie.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, he is on the ground in Mexico. About an hour from now, we should hear from the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He is on the ground in Mexico trying to hash out a plan for immigration. The 4,000-person caravan moving toward the U.S. Something the president was highlighting last night in the human trafficking and drugs. Something the president was highlighting last night in the state of Montana.
I'm willing to send the military to defend our southern border if necessary. All caused because of the illegal immigration onslaught